Every time they ring out the old year and ringing the new, the happy Chinese never forget to sound their cherished Yongle bell. Its chimes intense, stately, resonant, and clear, and bringing with them a tincture of mysteries as if from another world and a touch of vicissitudes. When one chime after another reverberates over the capital, the answering voice from the people is auspicious and festive. What an awe-inspiring bell! Over 580 years old, it was cast by the imperial orders of Emperor Chengzu of the Ming Dynasty, who, not content with merely having sent Zheng He across big oceans to make friends with many Asian and African countries and compile the Yongle canon, decided to have this peerless bell cast to show off his political and military achievements, as well as to announce the choice of Beijing as his new capital. It is both a court bell and a Buddhist bell. Just imagine how the ringing of the gigantic structure struck so stirring reverence in the hearts of the people who listened to it in those long-gone years. It was a declaration of illustrious imperial power and infinite imperial graciousness, as well as an indication of the supreme power of God and the unlimited power of Buddha. More than 5 long centuries have gone by. Today, looking up at the ancient relic of the past dynasty, one seems to be looking at a huge exclamation mark hanging heavy between heaven and earth. It seems that the concern about and investigations on the Yongle bell have in the past been the business of historians and poets, and it was only later that scientists began to get involved. True, the Yongle bell is a direct reflection of an important index to the humanistic expression of the Ming Dynasty, but it is even more exact to say that it is a classical creation of the 14th century representing the heyday of China's science and technology, indicating an evidence of the integral level of China's metallurgy, foundry, mechanics, and acoustics of 580 years ago. From this bell, we can now find many of the answers to the mystery about the development of science and technology of 5 centuries ago. The height 6.75 meters, the external rim diameter 3.3 meters, the weight 46.5 tons, the variation of thickness everywhere up and down is harmonious. As many as 230,000 characters of scripture are cast on both the inner and outer surfaces of the bell. Such enormous dimensions and weight and such exquisite quality and technology. Even present-day foundry technology has to bow low to the enchantingly attractive Yongle bell. Through repeated investigations and textual researches, scientists have been able to clearly describe the method used for casting the bell and the entire process. This is the pottery mold method, first developed over 2,000 years ago when China was ruled by the Shang and Zhou dynasties. When handed down to the skilled craftsmen of the Ming dynasty, it attained perfection and was used by them in creating a spectacular and majestic scene. A deep pit 10 meters square was dug in the ground, and the exterior mold was cast in 7 sections in accordance with the bell model designed in advance. The huge components were dried in the shade at low temperature and calcined into pottery. Then the framework was turned, scraped, and made into templates according to the radii and thickness of the different cross-sections of the bell to make its interior mold. When the 7 pottery outer rings were linked into something like a 7-story pagoda, the big bell was successfully assembled. This must be a flawless operation that does not allow for even the slightest deviation or error that would result in a complete failure of the whole job. To enable the bell to bear the pressure from pouring and to ensure sufficient strength, the exterior mold was no doubt filled in with earth and tamped layer by layer. The not easily detected scars on the 4 sides of the bell knobs give away the exact locations of the 4 pouring ports. The typical shower pouring method came to view. Dozens of smelting furnaces were fanned out along the 4 grooves. Inside the furnaces was molten copper, and the interior and exterior molds were preheated at high temperature. After the flood of molten copper came rushing out in a stream from the furnace chambers, the colossal big bell was made all at once. Looking back on such an imagined scene, one can safely say that the handicraft workshop of 500 years ago suggests the scale and flavor of large-scale modern industry. Cooling is another life-threatening process. With the fire still burning and the flames still raging in the pit, the cooling speed must be controlled to keep the bell body from cracking by explosion. It was precisely because of something wrong in the process of cooling that cracks were found in the world-famous Russian bell, resulting in a bell without sound. And the large pit that gave birth to the Yongle bell was now a natural cooling system. It is hard to imagine the painstaking effort and thoughtful care the toiling craftsmen must have given to ensure the safe burst of the big Yongle bell by safely reducing the temperature. If the bell is compared to a melon or fruit, then this part that is called pu lao should be its stem or handle. Pu lao is a term used in Buddhism meaning dragon's claws, and it does look like claws taking fast hold of the big bell. As a bell knob for bearing weight, pu lao has been cast in advance in the lost wax process, with a steel core skillfully inserted somewhere reserved between the inner and outer molds. The pu laos are preheated at high temperature and then poured into the body of the bell. No seam or gap can be found in their merger with the bell, but they seem to have been born whole, a result no welding or soldering can bring about. The 4 ends of the pu lao appear to have been rooted there and all expand into spheroids so that when lifted, the big bell will never pull out or slip off. What is most marvelous is that over 230,000 characters of Buddhist scriptures and incantations are cast on every inch of the inner and outer surfaces of the big bell. Probably repentant of having killed too many innocent people when he seized the throne, or determined to convert to Buddhism owing to his wariness in having defeated all his opponents, Emperor Chengzu devoted all his life and energy to working on famous Sutra Buddhas, Tathagata, and divine monks that runs to 40 volumes of 200,000 characters, with the first half engraved on the Yongle bell. Many other Buddhist scriptures and Sanskrit incantations are also cast on the bell. It has been conjectured by some scholars that the initial motive of Emperor Chengzu was to find a permanent carrier for the work of his painstaking efforts to enlighten the broad masses of people and to be handed down from generation to generation. If so, the relationship between the bell and sutra is like that between body and soul. Perhaps what is on the bell are the doubtless phrases written in the most difficult to pronounce characters. On the other hand, however, such a clever and unparalleled arrangement, with each and every one of the 230,000 characters having its own neat place on the bell, neither one too many nor one too little, is bound to have been based on meticulous planning and calculation. It is said that the first scriptures were written on Xuan paper, a high-quality paper made in Quancheng, Anhui province by Shen Du, the famous calligrapher, and other well-known scholars in the capital, and then reversely impressed on the bell mold and later carved into characters in intaglio by craftsmen. What then had to be done was to use fire as the writing brush and copper as the ink to give the final touch to all these 230,000 radiant and gracefully written characters. Take out a tiny grain of metal from a tiny sand hole at the top of the big bell, and then scrape off a little metal powder from an inconspicuous edge of the bell's bottom. Chemical quantitative analysis shows that the composition at the top and at the bottom of the bell is uniform and consistent. That is bronze 80.54%, tin 16.41%, lead 1.12%, zinc 0.22%. Probably for the sake of giving it an increased social status, increasing propitiousness, and strengthening its resistance to rust and corrosion, 0.03% of gold and 0.04% of silver were used in the material for making the bell as detected by experiment. It has been shown by the curve of the mechanical properties of bronze that when the tin content is within the range of 15 to 17%, the tensile strength will reach its maximum and the acoustic performance too will be in the optimal state. Who were they that made such a wonderful chemical prescriptions for the alloy of the big bell? What made the molten metals in the dozens of furnaces so consistent in their composition? We cannot help getting lost in reverie. The way the bell hangs is another interesting topic. Completed around 1420 from the bell-making works, it was first transported to Hanjing Works, and then moved to Wanshou Temple during the reign of Emperor Wanli, and later to Juesheng Temple during the reign of Emperor Qianlong in the Qing dynasty. It can be seen that even in those years without large machines, people knew sufficiently well how to cope with gravitation. Here, the enormous weight of 46.5 tons is given to the wooden beam to handle via a front and a back bronze block. Every time a visitor looks up at what he thinks must be the weakest link, he cannot help feeling puzzled and worried. How slender and tiny are the pins that lock the bronze blocks. With a width of 6.6 centimeters and a height of 14.3 centimeters, how can they shoulder such a colossal monster? Scientists have found that a steel core is threaded through the pin by designers in those early years to not only raise its strength, but also to keep the color and luster of the outward appearance of the suspended portion uniform. To be exact, the steel core is a bronze-coated steel pin. By calculating the shear stress acting on it, its safety coefficient is 8.2, surpassing by far the safety coefficient of the strength of materials for contemporary airplanes. Some have even found from dynamic calculation that the pin can bear an oscillation speed of 15.4 meters per second. The pin will not break even if the big bell is turned upside down and then allowed to fall freely at an accelerating speed. As for the solid wooden beams and the slightly inwardly inclined props, they have remained intact without the least damage after undergoing several hundred years of violent earthquakes. The Asians have indeed created a simple, cheap, yet absolutely safe support system. We should certainly not forget the most important point while delving into the many fields of investigation. As a sounding device, the most fundamental function and ultimate output of the Yongle bell is its chime. In the final analysis, the level of technical achievements must be judged by the quality of the bell's chiming. In this respect, the Yongle bell's unique musical beauty has been described by numerous writers and poets through the ages. But scientists use another kind of language, that is fast Fourier transform, finite element analysis for rotary thin shell. A chime passes the Newton's prism like a beam of white light, and many partial tones appear on the spectrum. With the geometric configuration approximately fixed, the body of the bell can emit extremely rich overtones just by relying on the variation of the thickness. The thick bell lip is the main origin of vibration of high-pitch E3, and the variation of the thickness of the bell side will send out the partial tones C3 and A3. This is a chord played by different musical tones and high waves formed by numerous brooks and streams. After the Yongle bell was completed, it was just impossible to tune up by mechanical scraping or trimming, since both the inner and outer surfaces of the bell were covered with scriptures. But excellent sound effect was obtained at a stretch, definitely by no mediocre musicians. Owing to the phenomenon of beat frequency and the difference in the rate at which the partial tones die away in the atmosphere, there ensue the cadence of the chimes and the slight difference in tone at different spots on the bell. A heavy strike produces a chime that would last as long as 3 minutes, with the lowest fundamental tone formed by the lingering tune. No wonder there is always the solemn boon with the bell. As can be seen from the old Chinese saying, so long as you remain a monk, you go on tolling the bell. The ringing of ancient Chinese bells is not by having the bell tone strike the inner wall, as is done in the West, but by using a wooden mallet to strike the outer wall. 6 months were needed to strike the Yongle bell in those years. And so, with all 6 striking at the same time, the ringing was heard for about 10 miles around. Right below the rim of the bell is an octagonal pit which not only provides an opportunity to look up at the scriptures on the inner wall of the bell, but also serves as something like the modern orchestra in front of a stage. Originality and ingenuity are found everywhere here, and it is exactly all the wisdom put together that has made the oriental resonant ringing of the 14th century so harmonious, flawless, and rich. Even today, reports on new discoveries and new questions concerning the Yongle bell keep coming in, such as what is the efficiency at which mechanical energy is converted into acoustic energy and the distribution of the sound field. Why was the famous sutra by Yongle the Great, instead of being typeset in the normal order, set 2 times on the outer wall and 3 times on the inner? Is this a reflection of the unique concept of time and space of the Asian people? As a colossal existence 500 years ago, the Yongle bell surely contains much more information waiting to be discovered and expounded by future generations. Maybe we are a little sentimental remembering the good old days. One generation after another who have listened to the chimes of the bell in those 580 years, but the big bell remains as robust as ever, and its ringing remains unchanged. Its symbols and meanings are those of a long-gone age. but they light the way to the modern world with a bright, clear flame. The bell's immortal voice transcends time and space.